Welcome to the Hokie Hoops podcast, State of the Program episode. Hokie Hoops is a Sons of Saturday show. I'm your host, PP. I've got my typical Hoops co-host, Mike McDaniel and Ed Williams here, but we've also got Billy Ray Mitchell, co-founder of the Sons of Saturday. We've got my co-host on Too Deep, Sam Jesse, and we've also got Robert Irby, formerly of the Sports Business Journal, but now just a ball knower and
always been a ball knower
vibes guy. Frequent Sons of Saturday contributor Robert Irby. Thank you guys all for being here. How are we feeling tonight, friends? Feeling good? What is it?
Feeling out.
Oh, breaking news. Hubert Davis is out.
Oh,
wow.
that's
Camel bomb.
Right at the top. Damn.
That literally came in right as Pete's doing the intros. I looked at my phone. I'm like, oh, probably need to mention that.
That works because we are in the midst of March Madness, and I was going to give you guys an opportunity. If you had any shots across the bow, March Madness takes as we're going here, but that's a pretty good one. Hubert Davis out at fellow ACC member UNC.
Yeah, I guess we're all doing a lot better than Hubert is right now. That's for sure.
Did they have an option? I look, I had this towards the end, and I was going to say, look, like you can make the case, you can make the case against, but the amount of press that was going on around North Carolina and the lack of backing for him, not backing for him, the decision was kind of made for them. It just reinforces the fact that North Carolina continues to be one of the poorest ran athletic departments that is born on third base with the branding and the alumni and everything that can't stop feasting all over themselves.
Yeah, I said in the group chat last night, like, if I'm a UNC fan, even though I'm kind of pissed off at the results of the last couple seasons, I do not trust that administration to make a hire right now at all.
I was going to say he did himself no favors with the press conference after the loss in the round of 64 is what I would say.
It was indignant, maybe like a little bit of almost like a doubling down kind of thing in that presser. Mike, they didn't seemingly have a choice, as Billy was saying, right?
No, I don't think so. Even though like after that happened, like after that presser happened, after the way they lost happened, right, blowing the lead they did and all that, like for a couple days there was still questions about whether or not they were going to let him come back just because of the Caleb Wilson injury and everything else. It like drastically lowered their ceiling. The team was pretty, I mean, it was a mess, without him, offensively especially. Yeah, the over reliance on Steph Trimblue, like couldn't really shoot, like all that stuff. There were questions about whether or not they'd actually let him come back for at least a couple days.
Well,
so who's it going to be? Is it going to be Brett Brown? Is it going to be George Karl? Is it going to be Larry Brown? Is it going to be Coach Pop? Who's the next head
I was
coach
like,
at
Brett
UNC?
Brown. Is this a different Brett Brown than I'm aware of?
I was going to say, before we let Pete steer this ship back in the right direction, Mike, do you have any off the cuff who you think UNC is going to grab?
I think they should go after Otzelberger.
That's who I would hire.
Yeah, that's who I'd hire.
I think
is it a top 5 job?
Yeah,
Sorry, Rob,
easily.
go ahead.
No, you're
Top
good. I think
three,
a shot
probably.
in the dark, top 3 job. Billy Donovan. That's my guess.
Yeah,
Because I think his time in Chicago is done. So
yeah. Base legit.
No one can succeed for the Bulls, right? So it's anyway, we got to get back on track. You guys are feeling good. We've already got some breaking news. We're in the flow. In this episode, we're going to take stock of the men's basketball program. That's the primary objective. What happened this season, declining the opportunity to play in the postseason, the roster strategy for Mike Young and company going forward, and the issues this program will face as the NIL landscape continues to take hold of college basketball. Please like the video. Please subscribe if you're watching on YouTube to the Sons of Saturday channel. That's who we are. This is the Sons of Saturday, and we're going to have this panel-style discussion tonight on the men's basketball program. Let's get to the NIT in a second because that came up no less than 30 times in our group chat over the past couple of weeks. I want to talk about the season overall quickly. We finished 19-13, 8-10 in the ACC, 11th place. We lost to Wake Forest in that overtime game. It was our first overtime loss of the season after winning 4 overtime games. We didn't have Amani after the UVA game, and that continued a theme we saw throughout the season of taking on injuries. Overall, I think we were all disappointed with the season. I did want to start slightly positive. What was the highlight of the year, Sam?
I mean, Neo going off against Providence with John Fanta on the call was pretty insane because it was the number one story in college basketball for a few days. And I think that also is kind of a perfect starting point for this, because it was only a few months ago that we thought really highly of this team and this program. And here we are.
Sam, that was almost the first one that comes to mind is the Ohio State game in 2014, but Ohio State turned out to be pretty damn good. So actually it was almost like we were South Carolina in this past game, and both teams just happened to be not that good. And it got a ton of national attention.
Irby, what was your highlight of the year?
I think it's going to be the triple overtime win against UVA, man. That was awesome to start the Ryan Odom tenure with an L to Virginia Tech in Castle Coliseum. It's just beautiful. Who knows what that series will be like in the future, because Ryan Odom's an amazing coach, but it's nice that we got him once at least.
Were there any other contenders, Ed? Because those to me were the two like best moments. We had another 30 piece from Neo at one point. Ben had a great game. What else comes to mind from this season when you think back over it?
Just various Toby LaWall freak show plays. Just all the time, just freak show plays. I think it was against Carolina where he caught a lob that he had just absolutely no business catching and dunking in transition. I'm going to miss watching him make some of those plays that just simply human beings should not be able to make.
Yeah.
Couple more. The Clemson win on the road was awesome. It was one of those moments where it was like, oh, the season's over. Oh, it's not over yet.
Yeah.
That was one of them. I'd also mention watching Jaden Schutt play basketball from tip-off to mid-January. I went back and looked. He had 7 games with 3 threes or more. He had, I think, 2 with 4 threes. He had a game with 6 threes against George Mason. He was fun to watch. And I would say basically maybe like 38 minutes of the game against SMU, the game against Cal, the game against Stanford. And I'm not even trying to be facetious here.
Miami.
Yeah. You'd be hard pressed to find a team that played Duke as well as we played against them at home. I've heard that from multiple Duke people. If that's what we want to hang our hat on, we can hang our hat on that. But
we got to hang it on something. So those are some good ones as well. And yes, Jaden Schutt coming around a screen and then shooting that flat shot that hits the back of the rim and goes straight down. So great. But the big storyline of the year was some of those late game collapses that you referenced. Wake, Stanford, SMU, Miami, the almost catastrophic loss against Syracuse that we ended up pulling out. Some of that is coaching. Some of that is the roster, the maturity of the roster. And in a lot of ways, those late game failures, they were a metaphor for the season as a whole, like a solid effort, like good overall, but ultimately not good enough to finish. And so I have a question for you guys. In the eyes of the fans in general, I feel like most people would say the season was a failure. We didn't achieve making the tournament, which we all assumed was our primary objective. And I just want to get from you guys, what do you think was the main reason we fell short of the tournament? And I'll start with Ed, since he's our head hoops guy here.
Injuries. No, I didn't even have to hesitate when you sent this document out. Injuries for me. This team was really good when they were all together on the floor. We never got to see it. I mean, Toby LaWall goes out before Thanksgiving, and shortly thereafter, Tyler Johnson goes out. Then you get Toby back, and then you sort of get Johnson back, but then, Dorn's out for a long time. And then, everybody's all back at the same time. We're playing really good. You lose by 4 on the road to Virginia, going into the ACC tournament, and Amani Hansberry's out. It was just kind of one of those things where it was a team that I think at its best could have played, very consistently 8 guys a night, 9 guys a night, but was forced to at various points throughout the season only play 7 dudes a night. And it just made things very difficult. It limited the ceiling on the team. I think if this team had, 0 injury issues all year long, which again is not reliable, but I think this team could have been maybe even as high as a 6 or 7 seed. And unfortunately, we never got to see them at full capacity after the month of November.
Mike, do you agree with that on that?
I do. Yeah, I do. The way I look at it, right, there are several games that Tech lost in the final minute or two. I mean, we just listed them: Stanford, SMU, Wake, Miami. If you're at full health, you win at least a couple of those. right? Conservatively, you win a couple. I don't want to play like the if but thing, but like conservatively speaking, you're healthy, you win a couple of those games, you're probably in the field. Like, especially with how SMU snuck in at the end and had to basically lie to the committee that, BJ Edwards was healthy and he wasn't, didn't play, and then they got smoked by Miami, Ohio. Miami, Ohio was like just much better than SMU. I think when you look at how things went down, like NC State falling into the first four, like, yeah, I think Virginia Tech had a legitimate shot to be in the tournament if everybody's healthy. So, yeah, it's injuries for me for sure. And then, I think guys having to play in larger roles than were anticipated. Like, Neo absolutely had to be great. Like, there's a lot of hype coming in, but he had to be great as a result of the injuries. So it's like roles had to be elevated in a way that they probably wouldn't have been if everybody was healthy. That's what I would say.
So there's been some talk about this, and I know Robert and Sam have been on this, that injuries happen across the sport. I mean, we've seen a ton of them late in the season, heading into the tournament to teams that had high hopes, but a lot of those teams still managed to make the field or battle through. Sam, like if it's not like, that's kind of the luck thing that we've talked about on Too Deep before. Like, we had some bad luck, but how much of us not reaching our goal of making the tournament fell on other things?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the injuries are like point 1A, but I think point 1B would be we had a lot of guys who maybe didn't grow year over year like we expected them to, or guys who were new coming in that maybe weren't as consistent as we wanted them to. And obviously we'll talk about Neo a little bit later, but like when you look at overall for the season for Toby Lawal and Jaden Shute, did those guys really get better year over year like we thought they were going to as veteran players, coming back? I don't know if those guys really got markedly better than we thought they would. In Tyler Johnson's case, we were banking on him being one of, if not the best overall player on the team, and you don't have him either. So now that's 3 of your top 6 players that you're not really getting increased production out of that you thought you were going into the year. Only 5 guys play on the court. So if 1 or 2 of them aren't performing to your expectations, it's going to be really hard to achieve your goals. I think for Virginia Tech was like kind of a combination for me with the injuries, and then the guys who were healthy weren't really growing, not only year over year, but some guys just weren't getting better as the season progressed. And like we've seen throughout March Madness, not only this year, but throughout the years, the teams who get better throughout the season are usually the teams that not only make March Madness, but make a run once they're in the tournament. And it never really felt like Tech was getting that much better throughout the season.
And so in your mind, and I think I'm curious to get Robert's thoughts on the roster building of this team in general, because we had what looked like a pretty decent squad in late April, and then we started making this push to maybe get Neo Abdales, and it looked like that was going to be the piece that pushed us over the top. Do you think that throwing Neo in there was maybe a square peg in a round hole? Do you think it was a shot that we had to take and that the roster was actually a pretty good roster on paper?
I mean, I don't want to play revisionist history with Neo, because ultimately, like, if you have an opportunity to add a player like that, you're going to do it 100 times out of 100. You just are. And, he was one of the most highly rated recruits in the history of our program. And, the philosophy is you put him on the team and you figure it out because he's supposed to be good enough. I think looking back, and this was a concern for me in the moment, but when Neo was playing in that, like, what was it, the U20 tournament in Europe, and the whole team is practicing together all summer without him. And then you throw him in, a few weeks before the season, and now you're talking about this guy who changes your offensive system completely because of how ball dominant he is and what his style is. I think, obviously you don't know what conversations took place. I think maybe if they could have found a way to have him not do that, but at the same time, that's a once in a lifetime opportunity. But I don't know. I think that to me is really like what the chemistry issues came from, is you had a whole team that was prepared to play a certain way. And then you brought in this other guy who just turned it all on its head. I don't know.
And can I add this too, Pete?
Yeah.
I would say, first of all, to answer your question, I think it's fair to say that the coaching staff the fans, the players would all say it's a disappointing season. I think that's a completely fair response to this season. Aside from the injuries and aside from some of the other individual performances, the two things that really stand out to me are depth. So when we did have injuries, you got some Sincere Jones minutes, you got some Dorn minutes, you got some Gerdak moments, and the Pasha situation. I mean, he's the first player to enter the transfer portal. I don't want to say that he was unplayable, but he was kind of in a situation where when you're changing the way that your offense looks, it almost looked like there were different teams that we were rolling out there when Neo was on the floor or when Ben was on the floor, and nobody was able to really get their feet under them. The Dorn experience, really bad in the beginning, pretty solid in the middle, couple of good games towards the end. I mean, we're all just trying to kind of piece this thing together, and we were never able to have a true identity of this is what we do, this is how we operate on offense, and this is the type of basketball we play. I feel like we went through like 5 different iterations of what that looks like. The other thing that I'll say too, the one other excuse I'll give is it was disappointing to see the lack of quarter one opportunities at home. The fact that we got Duke at home and we got UVA at home, and other than that, you don't play North Carolina, you don't play Louisville, you don't play NC State at home. That's another thing that was a little disappointing. We talk constantly about how advantageous it is to play at Castle Coliseum, so I'd like to see that rectified with the schedule gods next year, but ultimately this was a team who didn't know who they were, didn't have everybody available at the right time, and didn't figure out what lineup needed to be on the floor.
And that lineup stuff is, it goes back to coaching as well. Yeah. And that's a piece of this, that it's an uncomfortable piece, but it is a piece that we had late game collapses and games that regardless of injury, we were in or leading and then blew. And then you have offenses that look different with different guys on the floor, and it's anemic, and you got to pull this one guy off who's really highly paid because the other thing's working better. All of that goes back to coaching as well. And so whether it's bad luck, bad roster building, or bad coaching at times, those were all pieces as to why this team didn't get into the tournament. Go ahead, Sam.
And yeah, going back to what Billy Ray said about the quad one opportunities at home, something that I noticed pretty early in the season, and that I think really hurt Virginia Tech's tournament resume. They had 3 what are normally very good non-conference wins that didn't really count for much. They had a neutral site win against Colorado State. They had an away win at South Carolina. And then they had the neutral site win over Providence College. Those are 3 teams that, I mean, maybe not as much South Carolina, but at least Colorado State and Providence expect to make the tournament every single year and have in years past. They all 3 ended up being terrible. I mean, what are the odds of all 3 of those programs being bad? They were all quad 2 games that Tech won. And I think when you were looking at Virginia Tech's schedule and the games that they won in the non-conference, I think you thought they would have had a better resume to start off ACC play, because we knew the ACC schedule, like Billy Ray said, was not advantageous for the quad 1 games at home. I think that's just kind of unfortunate. But again, you got to play the team in front of you. And like you said, Pete, just too many times Tech didn't put a complete 40 minutes together in these games that were kind of must win to get to the tourney.
Yeah, I will go back to what Ed said initially. Like, the reason we didn't make the tournament primarily is because as we're in the middle of an out-of-conference tournament down in Atlantis, we lose a guy. Right before ACC play, we lose a guy. And right before the ACC tournament, when we're trying to secure a bid, we lose a guy. Like, that is the main reason. But there are other percentages of the other reasons as well. And the binary metric of you make the tournament or you don't, and that means you succeed or you fail, like, that sucks, but that's kind of what it is in power conference college basketball. I mean, Mike Young felt good about this team. He said it before the year. And Sam, I think there's a clip of you on Instagram somewhere that says, it's not a terribly high bar if you're a power conference team to make the tournament every 3rd year.
Yeah. I think people have kind of crucified Coach Young for saying that. Like, I have a tournament team. I think he was right. I don't think he had a wrong read on what he had in the building. Like, I don't think he was watching practice and be like, by gosh, I think I got a good one. Like, he did have a good one. Like, he had a really good team that he never got to see play together out after training camp ended. He never got to watch them all play together. I agree on everything you guys have said for the most part. Like at the end of the day, they had games they should have won. We're not able to do so. I do think as far as the injuries go, I think probably your two most irreplaceable players got hurt in Tyler Johnson and Amani Hansberry. You don't have another one of them on the roster. Amani only missed one game. I get it. It wasn't that big. Like at the end of the day, it was the end of the season. But I think Tyler Johnson's injury, I think fans know how big and important he is, but I don't think they truly understand how much he covers up for other people, how much he made, I think, and personally, I think he made Neo's life really easy in non-conference. And once he was out, I think that dramatically changed how they had to play, which we've talked about, and how things went for Abdales specifically when Johnson went out. It was just one of those seasons, whether it be like the scheduling was unfortunate, out of our control, injuries unfortunate, out of our control. It's very frustrating. But I do want to say, like, I think Coach Young had the right read. I think it was a tournament team with barring some pretty unfortunate luck on the injury side and the scheduling side.
To your point, Ed, losing Tyler Johnson is like losing Justin Bibbs or losing Ahmed Hill on that 2019, 2018 teams. It is the way that I kind of look at it. Not somebody who's your primary scorer, plays fantastic defense, awesome passer. Justin Bibbs, good 3-point shooter. I'd pull out your bingo boards. I'll use a Bill Simmons reference here. There's a ton of reasons that this happened. If you played this season 10 times over, I think this is the bottom 20% of the result that you would get if you played it 10 times.
I think I probably agree with that.
So that's now, how I look at it.
Here's a fun question. Mike, if we are missing Neo for the same games as Tyler Johnson and you have Tyler Johnson healthy, you swap spots. Is this team in the tournament?
Oh man.
Don't make me.
I see. This is a good one. I just came up with this.
It's a great question. I mean, if you would ask me after the Providence game, I would say probably not a tournament team. If you would ask me like middle of conference play or basically any other time, in ACC play, I would say, yeah, it is. When Tyler Johnson went out, like we've talked about on Hokie Hoops, like when Tyler Johnson went out, Neo's job became a lot harder, right? And he wasn't the same player, or at least wasn't nearly as comfortable in the role that he had. If you take him out of the lineup, right, I think for a lot of the season, what we saw out of Neo obviously was his ability, like when he was at his best, was his ability as a passer, right, and as a facilitator. That is like the number one thing, right? You'd see like glimpses of him as a rebounder, you'd see glimpses of him as a defender. But for and you'd see glimpses of him as a scorer, as we saw against Providence. But for the most part, it was his passing, his facilitating. I think you get that from the other guy. Obviously, he's the best passer on the team. But I think you get that from the other guys in the lineup when he's out still. Like, you get enough of it, I guess is what I'm saying. You missed Tyler Johnson's defense. You missed his rebounding. You missed his scoring ability, his outside shooting that was so improved. You missed that a lot when he was out. You missed the athleticism of Toby adding a dimension to the offense when he was out of the lineup, right? Beginning ACC play, missed that a lot. Neo, it's like you miss the facilitating. It's like, okay, but you can probably replace that a little bit better. You have another point guard in Ben Hammond who had a really good year. Yeah.
Not only do you have another point guard in Ben Hammond, you also have a coach who can basically facilitate by calling plays. Like get guys open through that avenue. Yeah, that's a great question. Is that why you were smiling when I was talking? Did that pop into your head?
It is.
Did Bill Simmons help? You went Ewing theory on that.
Yeah, I really did. No, but Tyler Johnson's also a guy that you just don't have to run a play for. You can just put him out there and he's going to make an impact on the game. That was one thing me, Mike, and Ed had talked about with Neo, is that he needs to get like into the game more. He needs to get more rebounds. He needs to go to the hole more. Like he just needs to be more a part of the game. And with Tyler Johnson, you never have to worry about that. Anyway, we can move on from that. I want to tell our listeners that you can use code HOOPS20 to get 20% off your order at Roback. Bill was rocking the Azalea polo. I think it was yesterday or earlier today. That's a beautiful one. They got the new Virginia Tech Hokie polo. Sam's got his hoodie on. The hoodies are so comfortable. Make sure you use code HOOPS20 over at Roback. Load up your cart and maybe buy your girlfriend, spouse, boyfriend, whatever, something as well, because they have all kinds of good stuff over there, all the colleges.
Can I ask a question, Pete, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Before we get into the others, I know we talked about highlights. I do just want to mention 2 lowlights that like are burned into my memory of this season. Number 1, and I don't want to blame him specifically, but the Ben Hammond drive to the hoop at the buzzer. I think we were 0 for 2 for that, maybe 0 for 3. And I don't know a team that may have had a worse record in inside 4 minutes reviewing a call than Virginia Tech did this year. Those 2 things stand out to me as low lights this year.
If you want to tack on refereeing to the bad luck of the season, I would say that we had a more difficult year than most. And I know that it's a fan saying that, so it's tough, but like it was some of that stuff, like the Wake Forest game, last game of the season, that was brutal. But there were some other moments.
Carolina.
Yeah, Carolina was bad.
tough.
But I guess every fan base probably feels that way to an extent. Let's talk about the NIT, fellas. It pissed a bunch of people off when we didn't decide to play and take the invitation to play in the NIT. Andy Bitter called it lame on X. A lot of people called it lame. Ed, why did they do this? What was the primary motivation? I'll put up the statement, but you go ahead.
I believe the primary motivation there was injuries and concern of not having enough bodies basically to go through what could be a multi-week tournament run. I know that'll sound like a pretty standard and boring excuse, but when you think about what they went through from an injury perspective all season long, the uncertainty around the severity of Imani Hansberry's injury at the time, and we still don't really know the answer to that question, I guess, but you had Sincere Jones already on a scooter. You had Imani Hansberry out for the ACC tournament. You had a couple guys get hurt in the ACC tournament. You know, Tyler Johnson had been out all season long. There were, talks, I guess, on the internet, and Mike Young mentioned it at one point too, of Abdales dealing with injuries throughout the year. It was just, I think the team was probably a little bit more banged up than the public knew or the team let on. Obviously, Sincere Jones on a scooter, you can't hide that one. But in general, I do think there were a few guys maybe more nicked up than we let on, and it was a really thin team to begin with. They didn't play a lot of guys. So you get into a tournament run, you lose one more guy, say Christian Gerdek rolls his ankle. All of a sudden you're playing, what are you going to do? Burn Solomon Davis's red shirt so you can keep playing in the NIT? I don't know. I was frustrated by it because I'm someone who just loves to watch Virginia Tech basketball. I don't really care what they're playing in. I want to watch them play. So for me, I was bummed because I didn't get to watch them play again. And guys like Lawal and Bedford, I would have enjoyed getting to watch them play some more basketball. But I guess from the injury perspective and what they were dealing with, I understand the thought process.
Robert, did it bother you personally that we didn't play?
I don't think anything that Virginia Tech basketball does should bother me personally, but it probably does anyway. No, it did not. I understand because you hear people talk about it over and over and over again. So both schools of thought. I understand the whole idea of like, well, why are you quitting on a season, et cetera, et cetera. Like it's, maybe more of an old school mindset, but I get it. I think at the end of the day, I'm looking around at the NIT as a whole, have not watched 1 second of an NIT game.
Nope.
Not gonna.
Could not tell you who's playing in it.
Could not tell you. I'm sorry. It's just in this era where most of these kids are about to enter the portal anyway, why would they want to play games that ultimately don't mean anything? And I know you can say, pride, finish your season, win this tournament, whatever. Like it's full of teams that have had 8,000 opportunities that they've pissed away. And now, like, what are they going to do? I don't know. I think that they should make this tournament solely for mid-majors, and it's full of those, the Belmonts and the UNC Wilmingtons who had amazing seasons and just fell short in their conference tournaments, because I think those teams would actually care. I don't.
Belmont also said no to the NIT.
Right. Yeah.
Bad example there.
Great. Yeah.
No, it's your point is so valid.
It's just archaic, and I don't fault them for making that choice.
Can I'm pretty surprised given my initial reaction and where I am now. I've come a long way with this. I have no problem with us not playing in the NIT, given the reasons, whatever. I maybe would have watched there's no way that you come away with it. If we would have won the NIT, I'm not like fired up. I'm going to just, that's my opinion. People can disagree with that. What I will say is I understand where Chris Coleman wrote an article about it. I think that as is pretty normal with the athletic department, my issue is not as much the action, it is the message that is released. The fact that Coach Young had the conversation that David Teal put the video out from a couple of years ago, where he would never deny an opportunity to play. The fact of the matter that he mentioned wanting to coach this team again. The fact of the matter of, I think it was Jaden Schutt or Ben Hammond had mentioned that they were going to play another game together. I understand things change. It's another example, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, where maybe we say too much or we say things incorrectly at the wrong time, which caused this entire kerfuffle. If Virginia Tech waits 2 days to say they're not playing in the NIT and they don't break the seal, they don't break the golden seal at the urinal and do it, and then Indiana does it and some other teams go ahead and do the same thing, we're probably not making a big deal out of it. It's the fact that this is followed on the heels of that dialogue in the post-game press conference, the disappointing season, and you're the first team to do it. As silly as that is, but I fully recognize that that was a bad look.
I think also you could have made, if we are injured, as it said, like in the statement, it's like we've got guys that are going on to pro careers and there's injuries. Who's going on to a pro career? Tell me who right now, because I'm not so sure many of these guys. First of all, let's get the NBA thing out of the way. Yes, I know overseas basketball exists, but if you're clear, like this guy's got a twisted ankle, this guy's got a bad back, this guy, okay, fine, I get it. And also the timing, Bill, totally agree with you. I'm sorry, Rob, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like to Billy's point, it's always hardest to be the first one to do that type of thing. Like, does anyone remember when Christian McCaffrey was like the first player ever to opt out of a bowl game, and the absolute vitriol he received for that? And
Do
it's
you remember
like,
the first kid to get out of say no to playing for COVID? Who that was?
Right.
Caleb Farley.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
He's pretty much the first one in the country.
That's right.
Should Adam
I'm
Schefter have
not
broken
gonna
this news
touch
story
that
for
one.
us? Maybe that would have helped a little bit. That's just kind of how I feel about it. I'll say this. A lot of people will say, I might sound like a jerk, and if I do, please cut me off. A lot of people will say, hey, man, when I was in high school, I would give anything to go back out there with my guys and lace it up one more time. Like, I understand like the whole do it for Gipper situation. Like if I could have gone back with Tom, who was in my chemistry class, and we could have laced it up one more time and gone out there. I get that. There's this notion out there that says, man, I can't believe kids don't want to just play sports. Like, do they hate competing? This is a microcosm of how the media and how fans have told players to think about tournaments. So imagine you're in high school and you're getting ready to lace it up one more time with your boys, and you're like, oh, they're playing in the down dog derby that nobody cares about, and everybody makes fun of it and everybody talks about it. So you can do this whole thing where you compare it to like, man, if I could play in a state championship, I would have taken it up on it. The NIT is not a state championship. The NIT is everybody's laughing at you, everybody's clowning you, your team's hurt, and you're probably going to go lose to like Cal Fullerton or go lose to South Dakota State Regional High School College. So I do laugh a little bit when I hear people say, take that route with it. Now on the other side of the can, they're getting paid a lot of money. And a lot of these fans have put money in and they're like, hey, I'm paying you to play. You should play. So my only question would be, would you watch? And I think for most people, the answer is probably not. So I feel bad for the 15.
No, there would have been 700 people in Castle Coliseum for that.
Yeah, correct.
So don't. Like,
I think
don't
two
give a
things
hoot
can be true
about
though,
the NIT.
as well, Sam. And I think you know this. No one wants to actually watch this team play any more games, particularly meaningless ones. Like if for real, like I would have watched, but not many other people would have want to. But also the will, the fight, the general vibes of this team. It seems bad when you do this, especially in light of the Mike Young quote of "I'll never be too big for my pants to play in the NIT," as Billy referenced. So it all looks kind of bad. And I'm going to bring this up because this made Ed laugh earlier, but the Malcolm Delaney tweet about playing in the NIT, and that they had been, rebuffed from the tournament year after year after year. That team back in 2011, I think, Mike, didn't want to play.
Yeah, you're right.
They didn't want to play in the NIT. And Seth Greenberg essentially convinced them to play because it's bigger than just one team. It's about the program. It's about fight. Who knows what it's about? But, Greenberg had convinced them to play. And I've got the quote on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. But that, I know that might have come across as annoying or old school to some people, but there was something to that. The coach convinced them this is what you want to do. Did anyone take anything from that?
I think it's fine, but I think if players are injured, that you're not convincing them to play. So if the guys are hurt, which by all accounts the guys were hurt, that's different. It's not. I don't think it's like a bunch of guys marched in and voted that they didn't want to play. I think there was genuinely a group of guys who would not have been able to participate, whether the team decided to play in it or not. So it's not like Coach Young can, talk Sincere Jones off of his scooter or magically fix Amani Hansberry's knee. So I think Malcolm's tweet's fine, but I don't think the situation is comparable necessarily.
What do you got?
And I think it's
something.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
I got a take on this entire thing. First of all, I did not give a shit. I didn't care that they opted out of the NIT. Just did not care.
I think we're 6 of 6 of not giving a damn about
the bigger. Well, yeah, because again, didn't know who was in it. Sam, thanks for reminding me that Belmont opted out. Rob,
yeah, of course, no problem.
Until it wasn't. Yeah, that was good. Glad we covered all that. The one thing I will say is that I was annoyed watching the people who were getting most mad about Tech declining the NIT bid being the ones vocally on social media being most ready to be done with the season. They're like, I don't want to watch this team anymore. And then they decline the NIT bid. They're like, why the hell would they do that? Why would they decline the NIT? It's like, you can't have it both ways.
Mike,
Also,
I got it. Oh, sorry.
No. One last thing. Also, I get the team's injured, the Hansberry injury, I get, but I also refuse to believe the team didn't want to play in the NIT because Sincere Jones was hurt. Nothing against Sincere Jones, but he was the 12th guy that Tech played, right? It was almost out of necessity he played. You know what I mean? That was my thought on it. I think it's okay to just be disappointed. They're disappointed with how the year went. That's okay. It's fine.
It's the NIT is going into its second weekend, and Billy, you can go after this, but Pasha's in the portal or plans to enter since he can't technically do it. And Abdales is in France. So that tells you a little bit too as well.
Yeah.
I'll also say this. Newsflash. College sports were vastly different in 2011. And again, this is not a shot at all at former players, but if it meant that much that Virginia Tech beat Bethune Cookman in the first round of the NIT and then lost to Wichita State, and that was some galvanizing thing that we're carrying on into our professional lives later on, so be it. However, players were not moving around. There was not money involved. I don't think we had any international kids in the team. It's just a completely different situation. And yes, we can go back and we can romanticize about what college sports were before. The NIT doesn't need to exist. If you want the NIT to exist, you're going to have to tie dollars to it because it doesn't make sense for a player. I'm not putting this out there as who knows if a Ben Hammond or a Jaden Shute or one of our players have gotten contacted by another school and they're saying, hey, I want to potentially have you come here. Does it make sense for them to go out there and play a basketball game and potentially injure themselves in some regard to either negotiate a higher price point at Virginia Tech or turn down a higher price point to go to another school? I know that's an uncomfortable thing to talk about, but comparing these two eras is as ludicrous crap, to quote Justin.
I watched that.
Take a drink.
Oh, no.
Nice. The Fuente reference. We got it. I watched that Wichita State game at Roadside Grill in Arlington. RIP Roadside Grill. It's actually closing down. Anyway, yes, vastly different from 2011, Bill. Vastly different from 2023 in basketball. I mean, things are changing rapidly, and the value and idea of playing in the NIT is different from even when Coach Young made that comment. I think Pat put something out about that online. But anyway, we can transition to Coach Young and his current state of mind, because I do think this is an important thing to talk about when you have a coach who is in his early 60s. For as fun-loving and young at heart as Coach Young might be, He is an older coach in the sport. And his quote after last season was something to the degree of like, I'm not going through that again, which I think he was referencing not having a point guard or ball handling duties, or maybe just the team being generally untalented or underfunded. But then this year we had the what the F am I doing in the press conference against, or what the F am I doing wrong after UVA? And now the declining to play in the NIT. To me, by my eye, he looks increasingly exacerbated, exhausted after each season. Does he have the ability to care at the level that he needs to going forward to like run a Power 4 basketball team? You want to go, Bill?
Yeah. Couple things. I feel like, and this is actually a disease that I have. I feel like I've watched every press conference of Mike Young since he's been here. I think I have attended a good amount of Virginia Tech basketball games. And when you run into Coach Young at PKs, when you see him on the sideline, he has always been that way. If you remember, when he was questioning what he was doing with his life, he was questioning what he was doing with his life when Wabisa Bede was playing point guard and he went and beat Clemson on the road the first game that he was here at Virginia Tech. I have not gotten the sense that he has slowed down in his care, his effort, or anything else. I'll also point out, this was a tweet, I think, by Dan Wetzel. So Rick Pitino's 73. Izzo's 71, Barnes is 71, Sampson is 70, Calipari 67. Yes, we did just mention some of the best coaches in college basketball, but if we're going to talk about age, we'll mention that as well. Here's what I will say. I do think that the one thing you can point to where you call this into question is the elephant in the room, which is the high school recruiting class for Virginia Tech. Is Coach Young able to transition into getting players for 1 to 2 years to come in, adopt his system, and do it at a high level? I don't question his ability or his want to. I more so question his pivot in coaching in a sport one way for as many years as he's done it very, very effectively, and then being able to do it. The counterpoint of that is you look at a Grant Basile, you look at a Lynn Kidd who was here for limited time, a Sean Padula who was here for limited time. He's been able to do it. But if you were to pin down and say this happening this year is concerning me about his long-term longevity, it's the high school recruiting class. And I'm interested I just want to hear him speak at length about the lack of not having somebody committed for this class. I'll leave it open-ended at that. That's my one question. But in terms of his engagement and everything, I haven't seen a big change there.
Do you feel that way, Ed? Like, do you feel that Coach Young can rev it up the same way he used to?
Yeah, I like Billy watch every post-game press conference, go to a couple games a year. I mostly watch pressers because he's unbelievably hysterical in them. But I have not noticed a difference either. And truth be told, I think this is pretty simple for me. He cares too much about this place to not give it his all. I've said it on Hokie Hoops. He's not hurting for cash. He could walk away and retire. This isn't him sticking around for money. I think he truly cares too deeply about Virginia Tech to have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So I don't question his ability to coach in this era. I don't question his ability to, pluck talent out of the portal. I mean, his eye for talent is pretty well revered in the industry. You've seen it across guys who have succeeded at Virginia Tech and guys who we've recruited and have gone elsewhere and succeeded at other places. So his eye for talent, that hasn't changed. And the other thing I mentioned before we clicked record is he's got a really young up and coming staff. Coach Moats is really young. Coach Byers, I believe, is in his early 40s. Coach Frazier is in his late 30s. They're all young guys with head coach aspirations who fit the modern era. And I would have to think a good part of that is very intentional on Mike Young's part, having some younger, hungry coaches who know how to play the modern game in terms of the talent acquisition piece. The high school piece, how can I say this? I don't have a problem with the strategy of more or less not recruiting high school kids at a super, super high rate this past cycle just because of the financial limitations that Virginia Tech is under, which I'm sure we'll all talk about here in a minute. But, when you have limited funding and 250 grand can get you, again, I don't want it to sound like these players' names are tied to these numbers, but can get you a high school kid or could get you, a Jalen Bedford. You're going to go get the Jalen Bedford if you're Coach Young. You're going to go get a 22-year-old and not a 19-year-old who can't help you right away. So I think when you're Virginia Tech and you're a little bit limited financially, you just kind of have to moneyball your way through that. I think that was a big piece of the thought process around the lack of high school recruiting. That being said, that class isn't done yet, so stay tuned.
Also, two of our best players this year, or at least they were supposed to be, were Ben Hammond and Tyler Johnson, two high school recruits that played multiple years under Mike Young.
Ben Hammond, very late signing. Like I said, stay tuned.
Okay. I think I said exacerbated before. I think I meant exasperated. Rob, you're a word person. What do I mean?
Yeah. Word person, not a mind.
You mean
reader.
exonerated?
There is a part of me, like I said, that I do worry about Mike seeming a little beat up at the end of these seasons, and I'm sure that happens to a lot of coaches. But Sam, go ahead. You feel like you have
no. I think if you question Mike Young's ability to like draw up a play on a whiteboard, you don't know ball at all. I think if you doubt how much he cares about Virginia Tech and wants to win at Virginia Tech at the highest level, like you have not been paying attention. For a nice little Game of Thrones reference. For me, the question around, and this isn't, I don't want to associate this with Mike Young's name in particular, but my question kind of around the program, which he does head up, is like, can we structure ourselves as a program in a place to succeed here, not only with X's and O's on the court and getting players in and out, but can we have the system set up so that when one of our star players is injured, for example, we're able to say like, hey, Tyler Johnson's injured. He's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. We'll let you know when he's back ready to go. He'll be on the injury report. Instead of doing an update every 3 to 4 weeks, that's incorrect every time, which is, it sucks for us fans. The one person it's the most unfair to is Tyler Johnson, your player. And I don't think that's because Coach Mike Young was being misleading in any case. He's not a doctor. I don't expect him to be a doctor. I think that just kind of points to, okay, this is a little thing that should be really easy to handle. And you fumbled it for 3 or 4 weeks in a critical time. And it was a big deal with your team. And to me, it also goes to the same point of when you're building this roster, right? Mike Young can't solely be responsible. Like, he's not doing the accounting and forecasting of our NIL roster. That's other people that he delegates those roles to. Can we build that system into play? Can we build the system into play that says, hey, maybe we don't put out a statement like within 48 hours that says we're not going to go to the NIT. Maybe we sit on this for a little bit because, hey, quite frankly, nobody gives a damn right now if you declare for the NIT or not. So let's maybe not have that bad PR moment. Those things to me, those things to me are the signs of like, is this a well-run organization or is it one that's maybe got some hiccups going on?
Yeah, Billy, I got one thing. I want to build on that and then you can have it again. But I think the injury thing negatively impacts Tyler Johnson and it negatively impacts Coach Young. And it's negatively impacted him a few times on a few of these examples throughout the year. I think there are times, NIT statement, some of the injury stuff, any very varied topic, he's almost too honest where it's just like, just don't say anything kind of thing. I think you'd be better off, public perception wise, PR wise. So that's why I wanted to add that there.
Let's call it what it is. The way that I look at his two statements last year, where he says, I'm not doing this again, I put that fully on the administration. I put that fully on how we funded the program. That is like
the roster was too bad, and
100%.
He didn't want to deal with that again. Yes.
If we want to call it what it is, and again, we are in a much better place now. I'm not here to throw stones at all. Commonwealth was in charge of fundraising for basketball. Commonwealth was told to shut its doors, and then we shifted over to Triumph. We have now figured that out, but we basically punted an entire year of basketball trotted out a team, and he was able to over accomplish with that team. And what I think is people want to talk about the ACC tournament. I'm most impressed with what he did last year. And then if you look at his comment this year where he says, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. If I'm reading those words, I'm thinking of him as like, if I'm Mike Young, I've been a good soldier. I haven't complained. I haven't taken my ball and go home. I haven't crucified my administration when the administration and the situation he's been put in could probably use some crucifying, could probably use some Mick Cronin up in there. And he comes to the end of the year and every bounce goes against him. So that's how I look at those two statements. Last year, I'm not doing this again. I'm not balling on a $5 budget against guys who have, $15, $20 million budgets. This year, it's I waited, and I finally got what I needed, and I had one window to capture it, and it went as badly as you can probably imagine with the roster that he has. That's how I look at those two statements.
Snake bitten was exact. Bill, you nailed that right there, because those were pretty spot on in terms of what they were reacting to. But it's also kind of stuff that like we hadn't really seen out of Mike Young in the first 5 years, is those moments where you're just like, it's like a break, right? Like it's broken him just for a split second. He is broken. And it happens. And he's able to like talk his way through it and be great with the media through those types of things. And there were reasons for them. And this year, snake bitten, because that was right after Ugana hits the three and Ben Hammond misses the free throws, right? Like it was a tough season. So I get being a little bit broken here and there.
I have the stat of the coaches' ages, because I've been on the message boards way too much, and somebody said something about how it's a young man's game and it always will be, and somebody responds and says Sweet 16 coaches 73, 71, 71, 70, and 67.
Calipari looks great for 67.
He does.
Money can do some things to your skin.
Why do you think I'm marrying an Italian, dude? Come on, man. Come on,
Yo.
Patino looks good too.
Patino looks great for his age.
I'm
come on.
completely being sarcastic.
Patino looks good for a good horror movie. Is what
he looks great for a corpse. Yes, he looks awesome.
Patino looks like any other guy walking around South
Nosferatu.
Brooklyn right now.
Rick Barnes is 71 going on 91.
I was
Rick
listening
Barnes
to some podcast about the tournament, and this is like the St. John's against Kansas, and it's like, this is like a Rick Pitino legacy game. It's like, there is no Rick Pitino legacy game. The legacy is set in stone. It's done. This is not a legacy game. Okay. Program funding. This is where we're going to transition, and the expectations, we're going to cut this thing off. If you follow Hokie Hoops, me, Mike, and Ed, you've heard Ed talk repeatedly about the money side of things, the way we're underfunded last season. And this season, even though we were much more respectable in terms of the money, we are still towards the bottom of the league. In the past, Ed, you have said, if you fund Mike Young at a C level, you'll get a B result, so on and so forth. You'll get more out of the roster than what you're paying for. Do you still believe that?
We, by all accounts, and again, it's all rumors, right? But about half of UVA's spend, probably similar ballparks for Clemson, Louisville, NC State, the programs you're competing with for, the 7th and 8th spot that an ACC could get in an NCAA tournament. Obviously, Carolina spends a lot more. Miami spent a ton of money this offseason when they brought in basically their entire new team. I mean, Malik Rayno didn't go down there, leave Indiana to go to Miami out of the kindness of his heart, right? So there's a lot of programs in the league spending a lot of money right now. Virginia Tech beat Clemson on the road, split with Virginia, lost by 7 to Carolina, lost by 1 to SMU, lost by 1 to Miami on the road, both of those games. So yes, I do, because at the end of the day, this roster, while improved in terms of spend and what they had and the ability to build the roster that ultimately was, like we all talked about at the top, if healthy, a tournament level team, even with the injuries, they competed night in and night out with a lot of the haves in this league. If you go back and just kind of compare the aggregate of everybody who played Duke, Carolina, Virginia Tech played those teams as well as anybody did this year with, again, in some cases, 50% of the budget or less. So, yeah, I do still think Mike Young can absolutely get more out of the resources he's provided. I think that's a big piece of the calculus of why he's still the coach here. A lot of fans obviously wanted, somebody new in charge. I still think that's a vocal minority that want that. But I do think a big piece of that calculus is, I can give this guy half of the in-state rival and he'll still beat them once and lose by 4 on the road. That's a great investment for me if I'm an athletic director. So yes, my position on that hasn't changed. I still think he'll get the most out of what he's given and what he's provided.
Can I ask a question or more make a comparison?
Sure.
Go for it.
I look at this past year and I just see so many parallels to 2018.
Here it is, Robert. Here it is.
And I think the average fan is understandably disappointed with where we are. And I just want to draw a couple parallels here. Funding is a clear and present issue. You look at the assistants departure. Justin Fuente loses Holman Wiggins. Mike Young loses Coach Giltner right before the season, right? The biggest differences for me are, I think, and it's kind of like a sacrificial lamb within your own athletics department. I just think that more people need to understand where we have been the last 5 years compared to our peers and the results that we've had. Because what I think happens far too often, it happens in football, but it happens incredibly to basketball because nobody talks about basketball all year. We have a disappointing football season and it's like, all right, Kenny Brooks ain't here, but Mike Young is here. So you're here to save me and give me my fill on Virginia Tech athletics happiness.
Haven't
Good
watched
luck,
you guys
Mike.
the first 2 months, but here we are in mid-December, late December. Here we are. We're ready now. Tech's played a third of their season already.
Good luck,
Sorry.
Mike. Let's see how it goes. And honestly, every year up until this year, if we're counting this past year as a mulligan, he's kind of come through on that. This is the first year that it hasn't really happened. The biggest difference for me, in my opinion, with Fuente and Mike Young are 2 things. Number one, I fully believe Mike Young is more universally liked as a person than Justin Fuente is. The second thing that I think is different is Mike Young is not a complainer. He's not going to get out there and talk about the lack of funding in one area, the assistant pool. He's not going to talk about his roster. He's not going to talk about the challenges he faced. He's bold enough to come out after last year, given a shoestring budget, and say, I failed. Like that's the biggest difference. So that's kind of where I'm at, but it feels like the fan base is very much in that spot where they've gotten to a point where you're probably in one side or the other, and you're probably not going to move from that one side or the other. And we say it every year, next year's a pivotal season for men's basketball, but Virginia Tech needs to make a decision on how good they want to be in basketball. Like, we can keep doing these podcasts. We can keep talking about this. We can keep everything, but ultimately Virginia Tech will get what it pays for. And I think up until this point, they have gotten what they've paid for.
Elephant in the room real quick. Like, I think they're fine with this. Like, I think they're fine with this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they were fine with it a year ago with how bad it was. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And like, where they were almost embarrassed, like at the end of the year, they were embarrassed, right, that they were so unprepared with the roster. But I think they're fine with this, especially now with James Franklin as your head football coach. I think they're okay with having a coach who wins between 18 and 20 games a year and has you in the conversation for the NCAA tournament at the end of the year. Because, like, realistically, I know fans are real, like, there's section of the fan base that are like really, really pissed off about how the season went. I think the 6 of us, with the way we've talked about the program tonight and how we've discussed it in group chats and everything else, I think we take more of a realistic look at it because of where they're at. But like, people are real mad, but also like, what do you want? Like, what more do you want? Because like, all of the money really is going into football. And I think with the way they're funding this right now, this is kind of the best. I mean, best case scenario is making the tournament, obviously, but this is like as close, in my opinion, to like best case scenario as you can have given the funding level. Like, you can go out and you can get somebody else to replace Mike Young, and you could, hope that with a similar amount of funding, maybe a change of scenery or something, like you get a new guy in and, the program takes like half a step forward, maybe makes the tournament more, like a little more often. And that would be obviously a step up, but like, what are the chances of that happening? right? Like realistically with the funding, what are the chances of that happening, that you're going to get a better X's and O's coach than Mike Young? Take this job right away, given where Tech's at, unless you're dumping a lot more money into it, which like I don't think they are. Like they talk about, oh, they're going to increase funding, but like it's going, the cost of a roster is going up. It's not going down. So like how much more money are you putting into this? I don't think Tech's going to put a ton more money into this relative to what they're spending now. Like monetarily speaking, could next year's roster be a little bit more than this year's? Sure. Is it going to be up with the cost of inflation for like the rest of college basketball? I mean, probably not. Probably not. So like you're probably going to be in the same spot next year, right? Where you're going to have to pray everybody stays healthy. If they don't, is Tech going to have like the depth to withstand it? Probably not. They're probably going to be in the same spot again.
But this sounds like an institutional problem, not a Mike Young problem. We're talking about program funding in this segment. We're not talking about Mike Young's funding. I asked Ed whether he still thinks Mike Young will get you more bang for your buck than other coaches, and he said yes. And I think, are we all on that same page, Robert? You're kind of giving me a look right now.
Sorry, I think I have had maybe 5 different thoughts pop in my head while listening to you guys talk.
I watched them all.
I'm going to just list them off. Number 1, Billy, never do a Southwest Virginia accent again. You sounded like Brent Pry. That was the Brent Pry, Altoona, Pennsylvania Southern accent. Number 2, if this is 2018, Mike, you are at SI now. We need you to write the turkey bacon article. It's rite of passage. So, okay, those were the 2 unserious thoughts. I think in terms of, what can Mike Young do with this roster and getting bang for your buck? I think the problem is maybe, and it really seems like we were really learning as we went, obviously, because, last year was a complete shit show. But I think that we're in a place now where we are too reliant on these 1-year rentals. When I think that if you look at what Mike Young's strength has been, even in the NIL era, right, is its development, even those multi-year transfers, like a Tyler Nickel made a really good jump from year 1 to year 2. And, even Keve Aluma, Justin Mutz, Lynn Kidd. Oh my goodness. Like you could name all of these guys that got progressively better. And, it's the 1-year rentals. Like Bedford was fine. Robbie Barron was fine. Basili was good. Then it's like, I don't know. It gets kind of rough from there. And I just wish we were in a situation where, especially if you're talking about optimizing a budget, Ed, you mentioned how like guys are here on discounts, right? Like Toby Lawal and even Hansberry being a guy who had been with Chester Frazier for years. Those relationships were pre-existing and had been developed, and therefore you are going to be able to sign or keep those guys for less. And when you're continually bringing in new guys, you have to sell Virginia Tech, you have to sell your system and write a paycheck. And I just wish that we were, and I don't know what the solution is, but I just wish that we were in a situation where the portal was more supplementary and not the core, and maybe it's unrealistic in this era. I don't know, but yeah, I think the priorities right now beyond bringing people in should be to keep Ben Hammond, Damani Hansberry, and Tyler Johnson, and because they're all going to get better next year.
I think you're spot on. And then Sam, I know you've been waiting patiently, so I don't want to take too much more time here talking about this, but I think you're spot on. I think that's the way they all think about this internally in that building. And I think that because Coach Young made it a point a lot last year in preseason to mention priority number 1 for them was to bring back Ben Hammond and Tyler Johnson and Jaden Shute. And who am I missing? I feel like I'm missing. Oh, Toby. Yeah, duh. He made it a point to mention that early and often last year when media started kicking off, how important that was for them. It was their number 1 goal. I think it's probably their number 1 goal right now is to bring back Ben Hammond, Amani Hansberry, Tyler Johnson, Christian Gerdak, the guys who they see as their future core for next year and beyond, and guys they've developed in-house, scouted, all those good things that you're talking about. I do think you probably get a little bit of a hometown discount based on those relationships and the trust that you get from developing those guys from, in some cases, middling 3-stars to really, really good basketball players in the ACC. I think that there's a trust factor and a relationship factor that there is some financial give and take there with that. My view on the portal for Virginia Tech is what you just said, Robert, where I think it's supplementary. I think that's what they want it to be. I think they were forced to kind of have to slam the reset button a year ago and lost what was a really good core that they had been building for multiple years. They lost Sean Padula because of money. They lost MJ Collins because of money. They lost Tyler Nickel because of money. Those three in particular all went on and are continuing to have very good college basketball careers. Those are guys that there would not have been this like slam hard reset year in year 6 where the program had to take a giant step back and rebuild all over again, which is what they're in right now. I know like late in the season on Hokie Hoops, I mentioned in a lot of ways last year was basically year 1 again. And that's very unfortunate, and fans don't want to hear that in year 6, and I get it. I don't want it to be that way either. I wish Tyler Nickel was still at Virginia Tech, but that's what happened, and it has, still right now. I mean, maybe now we're outside of that window where you could say it's impactful, but it impacted the program for
it's
at least 24 months. I mean,
that was a huge setback. Like that off season 2 years ago, when you just listed those names and you see some of those guys in the tournament, like. That was a gigantic setback. And we made fun of another Fuente reference and the Witt presser of this is year 1, but like it was a start from scratch moment last season. And it was extremely unfair to the fans because unlike now where you can wave this, hey, look over here, we got James Franklin. Like we didn't have that. Football sucked too. And the basketball team decided to divert money away.
And the worst part about it was, to build on like the hometown thing, the developed thing, the trust thing, the 3 that I mentioned did not want to leave, but it was life-changing money for them. I mean, they're not going to leave that on the table. Coach Young probably told him to leave, just like he told KG to leave when KG got offered a head coaching job. When you care about someone and you have that level of trust, they trust that you're going to give them good advice. And when MJ Collins and Tyler Nickel and Sean Padula have life-changing money on the table that Virginia Tech simply cannot or is not willing to match, they're going to walk. And it's unfortunate, but that was a huge moment in the Mike Young tenure that I think in a lot of ways gets glossed over, and people wrongly maybe assume that, well, if they love him so much, they'll stay. Man, 6 figures is 6 figures. Like they're going to make their money somewhere.
Can I tie in potential, like, I don't want to leave it on, well, we don't want to be good, so we'll just not be good moving forward. I think it's important for the administration to really ask the question. I saw a statistic that came out from David Hale. Virginia Tech has not won a bowl game and a NCAA tournament game in the same year since 1996, 1997. And you look at the successes that we had in men's basketball at the end of Buzz and in the beginning of Mike Young. You look at the successes with Kenny Brooks. You look at the kind of where we are now. Our wrestling program is incredible because they have a group of dedicated donors and they have a supplemental NIL program in the SERTC and a really awesome coach who rubs shoulders with all of those people. I'm not saying Mike Young doesn't rub shoulders. He's down at PKs and everything else. But for the common fan, if you want to get involved with basketball, reach out. I will also say I think the program can do a better job of making those opportunities more present. I think that needs to happen because we can point fingers at, coaches and players and everything else, but Virginia Tech needs to make the decision, and we all need to accept the decision of, hey, we're going all in on this. But I think you can do both. There are plenty of examples of programs that have been good at both. South Carolina spent a lot of money on football, but was also really good at baseball. Clemson, good basketball program, good baseball program, good football program. Same with Florida State. So I think they really need to figure this out, and so much is going to change in this athletic department over the next 3 years. And, they need to figure that out. And as long as it's the status quo right now, I think moving on from a coach would be, catastrophic. If you haven't been paying attention, look at Syracuse trying to go out and get a coach and then getting absolutely flamed by every person that they interviewed until they finally got Jerry McNamara, who played at Syracuse, to take the job. But everybody else they interviewed yeah, their money situation screwed up. I don't want to go coach at Syracuse, a national championship winning program. Like Virginia Tech's not in a position to go and do that. Tony Skinn is not taking this job right now. It's just not going to happen.
It's not going to happen because of the failures at the top of the athletic department. Like that's why the whole reason we're having this conversation is because our athletic department has been asleep at the wheel until August when the budget started to get redone. Totally asleep at the wheel. And now we've got James Franklin. And so now we can just let basketball suffer. I agree, Bill. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but apparently the leadership is only capable of doing one thing at once. And it's really frustrating because if we have a coach that the six of us believe is capable of so much more, it would be nice to give him the amount of funds that he deserves to get us to where we want to go. Go ahead, Sam.
And to kind of put all of that into perspective, I do think, and this is me included, I think as Virginia Tech fans, we think of ourselves as an athletic department as a somewhat more of a powerhouse in the ACC than we are at the moment. Since COVID, we do not have a major men's sports team that's above 500 in ACC play. Men's basketball since COVID, and this includes the ACC championship run, is at 46.7% win percentage. Baseball as much as women's basketball, that depends on the school. But those are the ones that aren't winning in the ACC. They're below 500. And to also put that into a little bit more perspective, about 2.5 hours down the road from Blacksburg is a really tiny private school called Wake Forest. They're at a 54% win percentage in ACC play in men's basketball since COVID. And half of the country thinks that they should fire their coach.
And this is something I wanted to bring up, Sam, because money is important and money will help solve problems, but it will not address all of our issues, even if we did want to fund basketball
and
better.
That's my thing. When you're saying like, hey, last year, like we punted men's basketball, what'd you punt it to? Because where'd that money go? Did it go into the football roster last year? No. Did it go into Olympic sports? No. Did it go into women's basketball? Like, no.
No,
it went to a lot. A good bit went to football.
I was going to say it went to football.
Well, how'd that work out?
It didn't.
It did. Okay.
Hold on.
So here's the
I
thing.
think that
Like,
money stepped out of bounds at the 1 yard line, receiving the kickoff.
Let me say this, Pete. I agree with everything you're saying. The other thing that I want to mention is that I know that there are smart, well-intentioned people that work in the athletic department. The biggest problems that I have are, number one, the results, and number two, the messaging that we continually get. And what I think is so funny is you hear from Penn State fans a lot of stuff, but you hear the most about, man, like he's just going to complain and be a squeaky wheel and cause so much issues for your athletic department. And I think the more that we go on and go on and go on, we look back and we label Buzz Williams as a crybaby. We label Kenny Brooks as a traitor. We label all of these people who have left the program as people who have left and pounded sand and gone on to other places. I think Franklin coming in and being a little bit of a squeaky wheel is why you're seeing so much of a turnover in the athletic department and them starting to get their ducks in a row. So I guess what I was getting at with my previous comments with Mike Young is ultimately we have not heard from Mike Young what the issues are with the basketball program. And nobody from the athletic department has stepped up and acknowledged that there's a problem. So as a fan base, everybody is left to look at Mike Young's inside 2-minute report. Like, I'm not saying the athletic department has to come out and crucify themselves, but I do think that it shouldn't be on us to explain that, hey guys, like we had a Looney Tunes roster a year ago and we put so much pressure onto this year. So I guess to summarize my entire point, the communication just has to be better. The avenues to contribute need to be more obvious. And that ultimately is what's going to lead to either Mike Young being successful or he's going to retire one day and you're going to have to go out and get another coach. And I would love for us not to crater for 4 or 5 years whenever that situation comes around. So the getting ducks in an order situation really has to start when you have this coach who's capable of punching over his weight, or you will get somebody who punches way below their weight with poor funding.
Well,
you may have a situation, whether or not it's best for Virginia Tech. You may have a situation where you have no choice but to hire from within when Mike Young steps aside, because they're going to be the only people who know the program in and out, because you're not going to get the type of candidate you want on the open market. And that doesn't mean the next coach won't be an assistant on Young's staff. I have no idea. We don't know when Mike Young, like how long he's going to be around. We have no idea. But like, that's another part of it. You want it to be in a place where somebody else could come in and take it over, and you're feeling comfortable with that. Not that you're going to create her for 5 years, like you said, Billy.
I have never termed my want for change with the basketball program as we need to fire Mike Young. I have always termed it as we need a reset, meaning to modernize, meaning maybe bringing in a squeaky wheel, because the squeaky wheels and Buzz Williams and Kenny Brooks, they're the most successful coaches in these sports that we're talking about, right? Like maybe Fuente needed to bitch more. I don't know, but like what we're going to get with Franklin, demanding what he can demand because of his status is going to suit him so much better than just letting shit happen. And that's why we don't even have a GM in basketball right now. Like, we need a more modern approach. We need coaches that understand NIL. I'm not saying none of the ones here do now, but as a program also, they need to understand what's needed and how to get the most out of players in 1 year rather than year over year. Because that's what it's taken Mike Young. And now we're not recruiting high school anymore, where some of his best players come from. It's kind of a scary proposition going forward to say, okay, Mike Young's now going to be an NIL coach when he spent his whole career doing something else.
I don't know that I would frame it. Their plan is to be an NIL program. I certainly don't think that's their plan. Clearly, based on what we're talking about.
Transfer portal program.
But yeah, I mean, you go and rather than spend a decent chunk of your already small budget on a high school kid who may not contribute, you go and grab that same high school kid a year later because he got paid a bunch of money to go sit at Kansas, didn't play, and now you can get him. So somebody else paid for his development, more or less, is one way to view that. Man, there's a lot to unpack with all of this. I think our coaching staff is incredibly good at their jobs and able to assess the NIL market and get the most out of what we have. I put a lot of the blame on why we have what we have at the feet of other people who are not, they don't wear whistles. I'll put it that way. I don't think that that's a coach's job. I know that you have to show up to events and shake hands and kiss babies and take phone calls and all those good things. But at the end of the day, the best programs around the country, football, basketball, whatever, they have people doing that job in the athletic department. That's not at its core Mike Young's job. Just like at its core, it's not, what's his name, Mike Hodgson, that just turned Syracuse down very publicly.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, Syracuse, cool. They've won natties. Oh, wait, I have to fundraise? No. I'm going to Providence. Like, coaches don't want to do that in this era or any era. So at the end of the day, I think and Pete, I think you largely agree, the frustration falls in the athletic department and the fundraising department, whatever that looks like today, whether it's, Triumph, Hokie Way, whoever, where the money needs to come from. I don't care, but I also don't blame head coaches, assistant coaches, directors of player development. Those guys' job is to coach ball, get the most out of what they have. And I think by and large, they've done that. I do think, though, like we've all talked about, it's an administrative failure from.
I mean, I totally agree with that. I hope that that's what came across. And that's why I said, like, a reset to modernize, like, that is institutional. However, there are examples of coaches across the country that go to a place and turn it upside down and be the CEO that everyone needs, and they get it done. And at this stage in the game, I don't think Mike Young is going to be that guy. And that's okay. And maybe that's not his job, as you just said. It's just frustrating that as a fan, like, and we're all six of us are fans here. That's what Sons of Saturday is. We should expect better than missing the tournament 4 years in a row. Should we not?
Yes, we should. And the last thing I'll say on that, because the James Franklin piece of this is is important, and there's a lot of parallels to be drawn. But Coach Franklin's able to come in and, ruffle some feathers the way he is because he knows the amount of financial support he has behind him in the form of the major movers and shakers in the Virginia Tech community, whether that be, the president or the athletic director. But in reality, let's call it what it is. It's the major donors who have the James Franklin situation. We have them to thank for this. He knows he has their support, so he can move and shake and ruffle as many feathers as he wants because he knows he's got people standing behind him, allowing him to do that. As Billy mentioned at the top, I'm not sure men's basketball has enough of that right now. An advocacy from people that don't have a vt.edu email address. So maybe that's the best way to put it.
I think the question that I would ask, though, because I think what you're saying makes sense, and that status that you mentioned with James Franklin, he has absolutely earned that as well. I mean, he's one of the winningest coaches of the last decade. So that goes without saying. We're not hiring a basketball James Franklin. I think I do want to push back a little bit on the idea that it's not a coach's job to fundraise. Obviously, that's not their main responsibility. Their main responsibility is to win games. And I think if all of them could let their winning do the talking and allow that to lead to donations, they would. But at some degree, they are the face of the program. And so when it comes to like people believing in the program enough to give or increase their giving, like the first person they think of when they think of Virginia Tech basketball is Mike Young. And I guess the question I would ask, and I'm not saying I'm advocating for this either, but is it possible that should a coaching transition happen, again, I'm not advocating for it, is it possible that a guy comes in with a more people-oriented skill set and is able to bring out more donations from the masses or from some of these specific donors? Because I don't know, are they able to shake hands and kiss babies even more? Even we know of, some friends with businesses and donors and things that have gotten like personal phone calls from James Franklin, and it's that extra mile, not just ruffling feathers, but going the extra mile for your donors. Is Mike Young able to do that? And would he be willing to do that? I don't think he would tell you that he's been perfect at his job either. I'm sure that he's always striving to improve. I don't know. I'm a little long-winded, but I just wonder.
I think you make a good point, Robert. I mean, it's similar to what I was saying with just some coaches are, especially young, hungry coaches that know they need money. They may be more willing to do some of those things. And I'm not saying that Mike is unwilling. That we're kind of walking on eggshells because all of us love Coach Young, but we're just in a very difficult spot where whoever is the Virginia Tech head coach, because of the way the department is run, you're gonna have to do more to accomplish the goals that us as fans want. Sam,
there was somebody that was on staff who did not finish the season on staff that I feel like was a little bit of a bull in the China shop for Coach Young. And Ed, you know this well. When you look at Buzz Williams' tenure, it wasn't just hiring Buzz Williams. He brought in his mentor. He brought in multiple people that had no ties to Virginia Tech, whose literal job was to build a community and to build relationships in the Virginia Tech ecosystem. That's why he was so successful. And you can say, oh man, the athletic department needs to staff that. I would say, yes, they need to find a way to bring somebody in that is able to do that. You look at Kenny, Kenny was pretty adamant about the fact that, number one, I'm leaving because I don't have my own facility, but also there are a plethora of other issues here. And I'm going to go to Kentucky and go try to build it there because I'm given more to be successful. I guess what I'm trying to say is if he's not going to be the squeaky wheel, which I don't imagine is in his nature, somebody on staff needs to be that squeaky wheel.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Sam,
this was great. I thought we were all going to yell at each other today. We actually kind of all are yelling in unison. It's pretty amazing.
And as we I know, Pete, we're gonna move on quickly to like some stuff for next year, and I think a good segue for that is like Mike Young doesn't only have to sell his program to current players to keep them and to potential players to bring them into Blacksburg. I think he has to sell the program to the fans at this point because, you know, as reasonable as the six of us might at least pretend to be on the mic here, like I think a large portion of this fan base views the men's basketball program in a somewhat negative light right now. And you can have a few of the big money donors, but right now, and we're going to talk about like, how do we put, you know, where do you donate to men's basketball? How many grassroots people are donating their extra 100, 200 bucks to men's basketball right now instead of something else? And I think you have to win back that portion of the fan base, and winning is a really easy way to do that. But until then, I think you need to be a little bit more of a propaganda machine for yourself. And we haven't really seen that out of Hahn-Hurst Basketball Performance Center, whatever it's called.
True. Is there, and that's something I even just as recently as giving before March 1st or whatever it was, I just recently made a donation and I wasn't exactly sure where to put it. There's kind of a lot of different buckets and you can obviously pick sports on one drop-down menu, but like which program am I giving to? Which like different football incentive? It's a little confusing. And I think like that type of messaging within the Hokie Club and specifically with basketball, like Sam was saying, could be better. Bill, are you aware of like ways to give that I might not be aware of?
We're going to have a conversation, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, about this. And until that conversation is had, I would encourage anybody that is looking to get involved into men's basketball, as I hate to say it, reach out to us and we will figure out how to make that happen. But we're going to have a larger conversation on how to make that difference. And look, the grassroots stuff is great. 100%. I gave my $50 to basketball. Sam, you gave your $100. Pete, you're giving your donation too. Ultimately, for the bluntest way that we could put it possible, there are some people with first names that everybody's very familiar with. We need to find people with first names that are big basketball fans, and those are the people that we need to find, and we need to get
that are known by their first names to like thousands of people in the fan base. Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
we need to find somebody for the basketball.
The last thing I'll say on this is a thought I've had a lot in the last couple weeks, and it relates to what you were saying earlier, Robert, about like could a new coach come in and shake the trees and find a few more dollars. As it relates to men's basketball dollars, I truly do, like, this is just a hypothetical. Like, I truly do wonder what the max capacity of that at Virginia Tech is. Because, I mean, all you guys on here that are like lifelong Virginia Tech fans, like, it's football first, and I get that. So I truly do wonder, like, if you go hire the best fundraising head coach in the country, what are you getting year in and year out at Virginia Tech? I have no idea, but I have to imagine it would probably underwhelm us if I had to guess.
Like that's a really interesting question, Ed. Like if we had hired, say Calipari liked the New River Valley and had wanted to come here a couple years ago, like that is the one guy where it would be like, okay, he can generate the most funds Virginia Tech is capable of generating when it comes to basketball. I wonder what that number is.
Yeah, we'll never know, right? Like, I do wonder because everyone's so hyper-focused on football, and rightly so. I get it. It is what it is. But I just do wonder, like, if you squeeze the orange really, really hard, how much can you really get out at Virginia Tech as it relates to basketball? I don't know.
We said goodbye to Mike McDaniel just now, and I didn't want to spend so much time on talking about next season's roster only because it's going to be very up in the air in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, we saw Isaiah Pasha enter the portal today. That was expected. We're not so sure who else is going to be expected, who's going to be back. I think, as Robert said, maybe Ed said, Sam, we want to bring Ben Hammond back. We want to bring Amani Hansberry back. We want Tyler Johnson back to give it one more shot here. I think he even put something on his Instagram of like, I'm not going out like that. And that's we want to see those guys because if we're able to retain, like that's when you get the most out of Mike Young's coaching is bang for your buck, bring those dudes back. Like that's who we want back. Are we all on the same page there? Does anyone have anything to add?
I think
Gerdak.
100%.
Yeah.
Get a lawyer for Jalen Bedford.
Yeah.
Buy him a lawyer. Yes.
I should have
Yeah.
mentioned this earlier, and I feel like we're far away from this conversation, but I do just want to mention it. I don't know what Neo is going to do. I believe that he's not going to be on the Virginia Tech team this upcoming year. I see no world where that's the case. I do just want to say that I get the sense much more that it just didn't work out versus it was a guy who didn't care. Like we said earlier, like he's in France now. A lot of what I've seen on the timeline surrounding Neo was, is he a good teammate, or, did he quit on the year? I never really got that sense. And if there was a guy who was going to kind of pack it in, especially when he was taken out of some of these games, it's obviously not going the way that he wants it to go. I just felt like doing the recap on the year, I did want to say that. I'm disappointed in how the season went, and I'm disappointed in how the Neo Abdales experience went, but I don't think that it was for a lack of trying from Neo Abdales. I got to tell you, it really is one of the saddest non-tragic injury-related situations and legal trouble situations ending of a story that I can recall. I can't recall one quite like it.
He did average 12.5 and 4.5.
Yeah,
So
it
it's
wasn't
not
like he was
like he did
unplayable
nothing.
either. Yeah,
Like he was pretty good.
Mhm.
It's just we didn't get the superstardom. And
Yeah, I'll rip off a few things here, and then everybody else can kind of give their closing thoughts. Specific to the Neo thing, Billy, I'm glad you brought that up because that's a point I wanted to make as well. I never saw any quit or pout or frustration from him in a public setting. I think it was on the Tech Sideline podcast. Maybe it was David, whoever it was, mentioned something to the effect of after the loss in the ACC tournament game. Oh, it was David Teal. He could have, left, gotten out of the locker room, whatever. He stuck around and answered questions even after not playing, the end of that game. After Jalen Bedford misses the tip in, there's a video David Cunningham tweeted from right behind the bench. The missed tip in goes off the glass, the sound goes off, and Neo is the first one on the floor to pick Jalen Bedford up. And he was on the bench, sprinted off the floor to pick Jalen Bedford up. He did it throughout the year. I think it was the South Carolina game. He fouls out. Ben Hammond goes crazy, and every time we win, he's on the floor, hugging Ben Hammond. I thought through a lot of adversity, Neo Abdales was a really good Virginia Tech Hokie from that perspective, and I'll be following him and cheering for him wherever he does end up. I do, the early reporting there is that he'll try the draft waters. If it doesn't work out, he'll probably enter the portal and end up somewhere else.
Great second round Charlotte Hornet player.
He's going to end up, I think he's still going to end up a really good basketball
We like
player.
shooters in Charlotte. Sorry.
As far as everybody else goes, I'd have to think the priorities are to retain your really strong core of Ben Hammond, Tyler Johnson, Amani Hansberry, and Christian Gerdak. I think they'd love to keep Jaden Shute too. I think there's a world where Jaden Shute could go make a lot of money on one of these massive budgeted rosters and shoot a lot of threes, and that'd be his only job for his senior year. Wouldn't knock him if he did it. Would love for him to be a Hokie, but I could understand either way there. But I think they have to prioritize as best as possible, keeping Tyler Johnson, Ben Hammond, Amani Hansberry, and Christian Gerdak, and building around those four. From there, Mike mentioned it very well earlier on the show. Yeah, we might get a little bump in our total roster spend. Does it keep up with inflation? Who knows? Because some of these guys are getting paid just obscene money around the country. Kentucky had a guy average 4 a game. He made $2 million this past year. So the money's crazy right now. Hopefully Virginia Tech is able to retain the guys they've built those relationships and the trust and the development with, build around those guys, and we'll see where we are in, my guess, late April, early May, as far as a better picture of where the roster stands. It'll probably be somewhere in that timeline.
Yeah, I wish that no, we're not going to be funded, like you said, to keep up with the inflation, because it's just growing so much every year.
It's obscene. It's obscene.
It's going to have to, there's going to be a point where it just kind of slows down or comes down or whatever, but it's not happening right now.
We keep saying that, but it keeps going up.
Right. And
Maybe it just
now we're
doesn't.
talking about $40 million football rosters potentially for this upcoming season. But all of that being said, going forward, eventually, like, Virginia Tech should be funded in the middle of the ACC. I don't need to be in the top 5 for basketball, but you got to get me to like 9 or 10. And I don't know that we're there, and I don't know that we're going to be there, but that's a point that we've kind of already exhausted. I'm glad you guys said the stuff about Neo because this was a bigger picture thing. He was a huge part of the season. We talked a little bit about him earlier, but like, yes, his body language wasn't what everyone always preferred all the time, but I think what Ed said was correct in that like he did seem like a pretty good team player out there most of the time. And
he's just European. He's got Shamit face.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of how he is. Yes, like he kind of has a resting, relaxed face. I don't know how you'd put it. Yeah, Shamit face is probably
resting
the best way
scowl.
to put it. Yeah, I don't know, the Euro scowl. But that's pretty much going to close it out. We've got March Madness this weekend. Sweet 16 is playing. I've got Arizona winning my bracket from the Sons of Saturday pool. I think I'm the highest ranked Arizona guy.
You
also have Arizona.
You and I have very similar brackets. And
Yes,
I think
we
it'll
really
come
do.
down to like 1 or 2 games for us.
Ed's
If
going to the
Arizona
game.
goes away.
Ed's
you're-
going to the St.
Yeah.
John's Duke game, dude.
I'm going.
Are you
to,
kidding? That's pretty sick.
I'm going to the DC games this weekend.
Are you going to borrow Billy Ray's Duke jersey?
No, he actually.
No, I got my Chris Mullen jersey on.
Funny, yeah, I was going to say, funny enough, he offered to send me his Chris Mullen jersey, so he's got one for every team. But yeah, I think it's St. John's and Duke, and then Michigan State, UConn. So pretty.
Did you take out a second mortgage for those?
I was about to
tickets?
say,
Good
damn,
Lord.
Jeff Bezos.
No, I got very lucky with a hookup on those.
Okay.
Yeah, little
that
fella's
is
not
awesome,
going to
man.
college, I guess.
Little fella's getting homeschooled.
I got myself second place in the Sons of Saturday bracket.
Yeah,
for your
you're
boy.
kicking butt right now. You've got
Many are
Duke
calling
winning.
it rigged.
Yeah, that's what
Not me, but many.
But also, Billy has Arkansas in the Final Four, which
Dude,
could.
Paul Patera is number 1. Patera's dumb picks is number 1 in
Who is his champ?
He's got
Duke.
Duke, and I got Duke.
Okay, but you probably don't have the same Final Four.
I don't believe we do. He's
But,
got Duke, Arizona.
A lot of
This
I don't know who else.
this is a little bit like people talking about their fantasy rosters.
Well.
so we might need to.
We so happen to have a number of us towards the top of the pool. We gotta brag on it because it ain't gonna last long, I'm sure. That's gonna do it for the show. Thank you guys for being here and absorbing what amounts to over 90 minutes of state of the program basketball talk. We will come back once the portal gets rolling and flowing. Me, Ed, and Mike will be back talking about who's on the team, who we're bringing back, who we lost, and what to expect. But until then, enjoy the tournament. Guys, thank you, Robert, Sam, Billy, and Ed. Thank you guys all for being here. This was fun. And until next time, go Hokies.